Welcome to Secrets for Weight Loss, brought to you by ProGen Weight Management. Each week, we'll explore effective strategies and practical tips for achieving your weight loss goals. Whether you're just starting your journey or looking to enhance your understanding, you're in the right place. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and shouldn't replace professional advice. So, grab a healthy snack, and let's dive in.
Hey everyone, ready to dive into some really cool research? We're tackling something pretty big today, something I know you're interested in. Reversing type 2 diabetes.
Reversing, yeah.
Not just managing it, but actually putting it into remission.
Right.
And we've got some fascinating science to unpack.
Absolutely.
We're focusing on a study from Newcastle University. It was published in Diabetes Care.
Okay.
And it followed people with type 2 diabetes who went on, get this, a very low-calorie diet.
A VLCD.
That's right, a VLCD.
Yeah, this study really shakes things up. It challenges how we traditionally think about type 2 diabetes.
I bet.
They had 30 people in this study who'd been living with type 2 diabetes for varying lengths of time.
Oh, wow. Like, how long are we talking?
Some were pretty recent diagnoses, like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
But others, get this, have been managing it for 23 years.
23 years? That's a huge range.
It is, and it's important, right? Because it means the researchers could look at how the diet affected people at different stages of the condition.
That makes a lot of sense.
So what they did was put everyone on this very strict diet, only 624 calories a day,
Whoa, that's super low.
plus non-starchy vegetables for 8 weeks straight.
8 weeks, wow.
Yeah, and here's the thing. At the very beginning, they had everyone stop taking their diabetes medications.
Wait, hold on, stop all meds.
Yep, all of them.
That sounds, I don't know, kind of risky.
I know what you mean, but they did it under very close medical supervision.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Safety was a top priority, but they needed to isolate the effects of the diet itself.
So, see how the body regulates blood sugar without any medication helping out?
Exactly. Then, after those 8 weeks, there was a 2-week transition period to ease back into regular foods.
So not a sudden jump back to pizza and ice cream.
Not quite. It was very gradual and controlled just to make sure things didn't go haywire.
That makes sense. So after this intense 8-week diet, what happened? Did people actually lose weight?
Oh, they did. Everyone lost a significant amount. On average, they dropped from about 98 kilograms to 84.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference. Like, what is that in pounds?
Like from 216 pounds down to 187.
Whoa. Okay, but losing weight is one thing. Keeping it off is a whole other challenge.
You're telling me. But here's the amazing part. They managed to keep most of that weight off for the remaining 6 months of the study.
Seriously. That's impressive. I mean, losing weight and keeping it off is tough for anyone, let alone folks managing type 2 diabetes.
For sure. It's a testament to the program they were on.
Yeah. So they lost weight, kept it off. But the big question is, did it actually impact their diabetes? Did anyone go into remission?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. Right.
But before we get to that, we need to define what they considered responders in this study.
Responders. So the people who, responded well to the diet.
Exactly. In this case, responders were the participants whose fasting blood glucose, their blood sugar level,
Yeah.
it dropped below 7 millimole.
Okay.
But here's the key. It stayed below that level even after they went back to eating normally.
Ooh, so it wasn't just a temporary dip because of the super strict diet.
Exactly. It suggests that something changed in their metabolism, something lasting.
Wow. So their bodies started regulating blood sugar better on their own long term.
That's the idea. All right, drum roll, please. How many people do you think hit that remission target?
I'm on the edge of my seat. Lay it on me.
40% of the participants achieved and maintained remission for at least 6 months.
40%? That's incredible. It's like, what, 12 people?
12 people, exactly.
And remember, some of these folks had been living with type 2 diabetes for over 20 years.
That's the part that blows my mind.
Right. It challenges the whole idea that it's always a lifelong progressive condition.
It really does. But of course, it wasn't the same for everyone.
Of course not. Everyone's different.
The researchers found some key differences between those who went into remission and those who didn't.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Wow.
What set the responders apart?
Well, one big factor was how long they'd had diabetes.
Oh, interesting. So, duration played a role?
Absolutely. People who'd been living with it for a shorter time were more likely to experience remission.
So the longer you've had it, the harder it might be to reverse.
That's what the data suggests.
Makes sense. Anything else that stood out?
Yeah, this is fascinating. That responders had higher insulin levels at the start, even though everyone was off their meds.
So even without medication, their bodies were still pumping out more insulin.
Right. It suggests their pancreas, the organ that makes insulin, was in better shape from the get-go.
Okay, so that's interesting. But what was actually happening inside the body to explain this remission?
That's the juicy part, right?
Yeah.
The researchers found two key areas where things were really changing.
All right, hit me with it. What were they?
First up, the liver.
The liver.
Both responders and non-responders saw a dramatic decrease in liver fat
Oh, that's good. Right.
and a big improvement in liver insulin sensitivity.
Okay, remind me why those things are so important for type 2 diabetes.
Think of your liver as the control center for blood sugar. When it's full of fat, it gets sluggish, less responsive to insulin.
Ah, insulin resistance. That's a big deal.
Huge. Insulin's the hormone that tells your cells to take in glucose from the blood.
Right, so when the liver's not responding, blood sugar levels stay high.
Bingo. That's the hallmark of type 2 diabetes.
Gotcha. But if both groups saw liver improvements, why didn't everyone go into remission? What was the other key area?
The pancreas. Remember how the responders had higher starting insulin levels?
Yeah.
Well, they also saw a significant improvement in something called their first phase insulin response.
First phase, what now? Break that down for me.
Imagine your pancreas is like a firefighter.
Okay.
A healthy pancreas, when it senses high blood sugar, it quickly releases insulin to bring those levels down.
A firefighter responding to an alarm.
Exactly. That rapid response is a sign of a healthy, functioning pancreas.
So the responders were better firefighters.
You got it. They were able to put out those blood sugar fires much faster.
Wow, so getting both the liver and pancreas back on track seems crucial for reversing type 2 diabetes.
It's a powerful 1-2 punch.
Now, did the researchers notice anything else interesting about these changes?
One more thing. They found less fat in both the liver and the pancreas, but specifically in the responders.
Less fat, better function. Seems like there's a connection.
Right. This ties into this idea of a personal fat threshold.
A fat threshold, like everyone has a limit.
Exactly. It's like your body has a certain amount of storage space for fat, and once that's full...
The extra fat starts spilling over into places it shouldn't be, like our organs.
Right. And when that happens in the liver and pancreas, well, it messes with their ability to do their jobs.
So by losing weight, the participants were able to clear out some of that excess fat, let those organs work better.
That's the idea. Pretty amazing, huh?
It is. But does this mean they're cured? Can this remission last forever?
That's the big question, and we don't have all the answers yet.
Right. It was only a 6-month follow-up after the diet.
Exactly. We need longer studies to see if these changes stick around for years, not just months.
Makes sense. So more research is needed, but these initial findings are pretty exciting.
They are. It gives us a lot to think about and a lot of hope for the future.
I agree. Are there any other studies going on that could shed more light on this?
There's one called the DIRECT trial. It's much larger, and it's being done in community settings.
Oh, cool. So more real-world conditions.
Exactly. And they're comparing the very low-calorie diet to standard care.
Okay.
And the best part, they're following people for longer, so we'll get a better sense of long-term sustainability.
That's awesome. Definitely something to keep an eye on.
For sure.
So where does all of this leave us? We've covered a lot of ground, but what does it mean for you, our listener?
This study shows that reversing type 2 diabetes might be a real possibility for many people.
But it also shows it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, right?
Definitely not. Your chances of remission might depend on how long you've had diabetes, your insulin production, and your ability to lose weight and keep it off.
It's complex, but this research gives us a much deeper understanding of what might be possible.
Absolutely.
And before we wrap up part 1, I want to leave you with something to chew on.
Okay.
Think about your own situation.
Mm.
What factors might influence your chances of achieving remission? What kind of support might you need to make those changes? We'll dig into these questions more in part 2, so stay tuned.
Sounds good. Welcome back, everyone. We're diving right back into our discussion on the potential for reversing type 2 diabetes.
Yep. And in part 1, remember, we really dug into that Newcastle University study where 40% of the participants achieved remission.
It was pretty mind-blowing.
I know, right? After following a very low-calorie diet and a weight maintenance program for 6 months.
It's like, whoa, maybe type 2 diabetes isn't always a permanent thing after all.
Totally. But we also talked about some big questions that came up, like what makes some people more successful than others?
And how do we make those changes last, long-term?
Exactly. And that's what we're going to unpack today.
Right on. So I think we should address the elephant in the room, that very low-calorie diet.
The VLCD?
The VLCD, yeah, it's a big part of the study, but it's not for everyone.
Yeah, 624 calories a day plus non-starchy veggies is pretty extreme.
It is. Definitely not something to try on your own. And there can be risks if you have other health conditions.
Yeah, like it's not a DIY project.
Absolutely not. Talking to your doctor before making any big diet changes is crucial.
Especially if you're on medications already.
Exactly. Safety first, always.
Okay, so not a DIY project, gotta have medical supervision, but even then, it sounds tough to stick with.
It can be challenging, yeah. In the study, the participants had a lot of support.
Oh, like what kind of support?
They had weekly check-ins with the researchers, by phone, email, text, even in person.
Okay, so regular contact.
Yeah, and they got very clear instructions about what to eat during that 2-week transition phase back to normal food.
So no sudden jump back to burgers and fries?
Nope, it was very gradual and controlled to keep things stable.
Makes sense. But even with support, keeping up a VLCD long-term doesn't seem realistic.
Right, and that's where the weight maintenance part of the study comes in.
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
So after the transition phase, they had a personalized program to help them maintain the weight loss.
Personalized. Okay, I like that.
It was all about setting realistic goals, making action plans, and figuring out what obstacles might get in the way.
So more than just a diet, it's about changing your lifestyle.
Exactly. And they still had monthly reviews with the researchers to keep them accountable.
Okay, so structure and support throughout.
It does take effort, no doubt about it.
But it shows that reversing type 2 diabetes isn't about willpower alone. It's about having the right support.
100%. It's about education, resources, and building healthy habits that stick.
And it's not about blame or shame. It's about finding what works for you and getting the help you need.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
But let's not forget the mental and emotional side of things.
Oh, yeah. Type 2 diabetes can be a roller coaster of emotions.
Right. It can be overwhelming, frustrating, especially when you're trying your best but not seeing the results you want.
Tell me about it. So, did the study look at the emotional well-being of the participants?
Well, not directly, but they did mention that motivation played a big role in success.
Okay, makes sense.
The people who achieved remission, they were super motivated to get their health back.
Yeah, big changes need big commitment.
For sure. But I'm sure there were times when they felt discouraged, too. Right?
Oh, absolutely. So how did they deal with those tough moments?
That's where that regular support from the research team probably made a huge difference.
Yeah, like having someone to talk to problem solve, to celebrate the wins with.
Exactly. It helps you stay motivated, stay on track.
Like a personal cheerleader. But that kind of support isn't always easy to find in everyday life.
That's true. Not everyone has access to a whole team of researchers.
Right. But there are other resources out there like diabetes educators, dietitians, support groups.
Right. And even online communities can provide some level of guidance and support.
Yeah, you're not alone in this journey. But I think there's a bigger societal piece to this too, right?
Absolutely. Our environment makes it hard to make healthy choices sometimes.
It's like we're constantly bombarded with messages about unhealthy food and being inactive.
It's tough to swim against that current.
We need to create communities and policies that make it easier for people to prioritize their health.
I agree. Access to affordable, healthy food, places to be active, it all matters.
Yeah, it's about creating a culture that truly values health and makes it easier for everyone to thrive.
Well said. Now, I want to circle back to that personal fat threshold idea.
Oh, yeah, the idea that we each have a limit to how much fat our bodies can handle.
Exactly. And once you exceed that threshold, the extra fat starts causing problems, especially in those key organs, the liver and pancreas.
So it's not just about how much you eat, it's about how your body handles it.
Exactly. And that's why personalized approaches are so important, both for prevention and treatment.
What works for one person might not work for another.
Right. We need to embrace the fact that everyone's different.
So how do we figure out our own personal fat threshold? Is there a test?
Well, there's no simple test yet, but there are clues you can look for.
Like what?
Talk to your doctor about family history, get regular checkups to monitor blood sugar and other markers,
Right.
and pay attention to how your body reacts to different foods and exercise.
Ah, so it's about tuning in to your body's signals.
Exactly. Be an active participant in your health journey.
Now, before we move on, I wanted to touch on those weekly check-ins and support systems again.
Yeah, those were key in this study.
Having that accountability and support really seemed to help people succeed.
It makes a huge difference. It's one thing to know what to do, but actually doing it and sticking with it is another story.
Right, like having a coach in your corner.
Exactly. But a lot of people might be wondering, how do I get that kind of support if I'm not part of a study?
That's a good question. And that's something we're going to explore in part 3, so stay tuned. And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into reversing type 2 diabetes.
It's been a pretty amazing journey exploring this research.
It really has. But before we wrap up, it's important to remember that no single study has all the answers.
That's right. Every study has its limitations, and this one is no different.
So what should we keep in mind when we're thinking about these findings? What are some of the limitations?
Well, one thing is the sample size, right?
Yeah.
Only 30 participants.
Okay, so relatively small.
Yeah, so we need bigger studies to really confirm these results.
Yeah.
And see if they hold true for more people, people with different backgrounds, different health situations.
So more diverse groups of people.
Exactly. And another thing to consider, this study focused on one very specific approach, the VLCD.
Right, that super low-calorie diet.
Yeah, and we talked about how it's not for everyone and needs medical supervision.
Definitely.
So this study doesn't tell us what might happen with other weight loss methods.
So we can't just assume any weight loss will lead to remission.
Right, it's not a simple equation.
We need to understand the nuances, find what works best for each individual.
Absolutely. And even with the VLCD, we don't know for sure how long the remission will last.
Yeah, they only followed people for 6 months after the diet.
Exactly. We need studies that look at a long term, like years down the road,
Yeah.
to see if those changes really stick.
Makes sense. Longer follow-up is key. Are there any studies coming up that might address some of these questions?
Well, there's that direct trial we mentioned. It's much larger, and it's happening in communities.
Right, more real-world settings.
Yeah, and they're comparing the VLCD to standard care, but they're following people for a longer time.
So we'll get more info about long-term effects.
Hopefully. It's exciting to see what they find.
So with all of this in mind, what can our listeners do with this information? How can they use it to manage their own type 2 diabetes?
The first step, and this is super important, talk to your doctor.
Right. Get that personalized guidance.
This research is exciting, but it's not something to try on your own.
Definitely not. Any big changes to diet or lifestyle, talk to your doctor first.
Absolutely. And stay curious. Diabetes research is always moving forward, so keep learning.
So, how do people stay up to date on the latest findings?
There are great resources out there, like the American Diabetes Association or Diabetes UK.
Okay, so check those out.
They have reliable info and recommendations. And don't be afraid to ask your doctor questions.
Right. The more you know, the better you can advocate for your own health.
Exactly. Knowledge is power. But beyond knowledge, I think this research gives us something really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
It shows us that type 2 diabetes doesn't have to be a life sentence.
Right. Remission might be possible for a lot of people.
Exactly. With the right support, healthy choices, and continued research, the future looks pretty bright.
That's a really encouraging message. I think this deep dive has given us all a lot to think about and a lot to be hopeful for.
I agree. Thanks for joining us on this exploration.
And to you, our listener, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep taking care of yourself. Until next time, stay curious.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope today's episode was informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a rating or review. Follow us on Instagram at Progen Weight Management for more tips and updates. If you have any questions or want to reach out for weight loss consultations, feel free to DM us. Until next time, stay curious and prioritize your health.